Let's try to put a couple of things together here I've been talking about recently. One is to do with the idea of the brain as a kind of fractionating column which takes the data of the world and sorts it into the stuff of experience. And the other is this idea is to do with what I've been referring to as feelings, which I guess are oh God, it's hard to describe without using the word feeling, but the kind of feltness of our relationship to the data of the world. Because when I look at this, the tree around me, there's not two things happening. I'm not like aware of it as let's say a visual image, and then secondarily have a set of relationships to it. It's bound up in the same thing. So I'll see if I can get to that at the end. But what I'm interested in here is just seeing what I can think of to put them together in some kind of a narrative. I mean, the kind of thing I would imagine would happen is something like this, that here I am in this field in Cheshire next to this little stream, and all this stuff is coming into my senses. I can hear the cars on the bypass, I can see the field around me, I can feel the chill on my hands. All that kind of sense data is coming in. I can feel gravity, so it's proprioceptive as well as everything else. I can feel all that kind of stuff, and presumably that's going into my brain, and various things are being acted upon that. Maybe these cognitive operators I spoke about before that are arranging it and composing it into meaningful ways, dividing it into opposites, clumping it together into meaningful gestalts, separating it off into parts where that's necessary so I can recognise the difference and distinctions between things, abstracting parts of it, counting other parts of it, all those little routine processes. So I imagine that's going on. Of course I'm not aware of that going on, but it's going on. But I think what's probably also happening is that at some point that data, probably the resolved data, probably the outputs from those processes, is being sent to other parts of my brain and ultimately to other parts of my body to kind of respond to that, or maybe to evaluate it, but not, evaluate's not the right word, but to set up a series of responses. So whilst I'm walking, for example, here I am walking on this relatively flat field in Cheshire, and my eyes are taking in information about the horizontal nature of this field, and that's being confirmed by the gravity that's pushing me down towards the ground. I'm not really thinking about these things, but this must be what's happening. And all that information, yes, as I say, it's being compiled in the fractionating column of my brain and given kind of orderly shape. But I think that information is also being passed to my body, and that's doing a series of things. One of the things it's doing, for example, is it's organising the kind of gross motor activities of my walking. So even though I'm not thinking about walking, and I'm not thinking about where my feet are going, my legs and my feet are swinging out here and putting themselves down into this horizontal surface in front of me in a completely organised way. It's a perfectly responded to situation. And similarly, on a much more subtle level, there's a range of different things happening inside my body. That feeling of cold on my fingers is causing causing tensions. That sensory input has got motor output, and it's causing a series of tensions in my arms and my shoulders. I'm slightly hunched against the cold. And presumably on an even more subtle level, all the stuff I can't really access at all, I can't get conscious access to, all the kind of biochemical stuff that's happening in my gut and my adrenal system, and the pupil dilations of my eyes that's happening constantly, partly because of the light, but also because of the attractiveness of various things I might be looking at. So as all this stuff is going on, which is a direct response, almost a reflexive response, I guess, to the data that's coming in, the sorted data that's coming in, being fractionated and sent out, and then sent to these to the body for responses. And then what I'm guessing happens is that all those responses, all the information from the muscles of my legs as I'm walking, and the information that's coming back from the nerves that surround the pupil of my eye as it contracts in different ways, or the muscles across my shoulders, and that picks up the tension, and all of the sensory stuff that's going on in my gut about what's happening with my adrenal system and my heart rate and my breathing. All that information is sent back to the brain, Now I guess what's happened at this point is it's combined with the original data, the sense data, the stuff from the fractionating column. It's combined with that, like the air and the gas in a carburetor. And it's that stuff, or at least part of that stuff, which becomes conscious experience. I mean, it must be combined, because I said at the top end, I'm not experiencing the world in two parts. I'm not seeing the world as a sterile, empty place, and then adopting some kind of a felt response to it. The felt response and the world itself is completely bound up in with one another. So that output from the fractionating column must be combined with the responses that the body's making to it, and it's that whole thing, that whole loop I'm aware of, I guess. Yeah, I should just say about this feeling thing, I've said this before, but I wanted to repeat it really. This thing about feeling, obviously I'm not talking about the grand feelings that appear in soap operas. I'm not walking to this field in Cheshire on the brink of tears, nor am I about to burst into uproarious laughter. I'm just talking about the general feeling tone of being alive and awake that you don't notice, and you don't notice it until it disappears. It's almost impossible to imagine that what we'd like, but I know there are neurological conditions in which feeling tone can just disappear. And just like if you sit on your arm, then your arm will go numb, and that feeling of the numbness in your arm isn't really a feeling at all. It's the absence of a feeling that you had before but you weren't aware of, because if you know, your arm isn't usually numb. I'm laughing actually because it reminds me of what's called a sleeping beauty, and if you know what I'm talking about, you might find that amusing. If you don't, it doesn't matter. But you notice the numbness of your arm as a thing, but it's actually the absence of the completely unconscious feeling that's usually there. And I think I'm talking about the same thing when I'm talking about the felt sense of day-to-day experience. It's not about the highs and lows of grand guignol emotional soap opera stuff. It's just a little background hum of felt existence that you don't notice until it's turned off. That's what I think anyway.